Hi, I'm Punky Scott, and today I'm interviewing Winifred Gardner, a longtime friend, and we are doing this interview for the privilege of having some information that we will share with Clackamas Community College Oral Health History Project and the Oak Lodge History Detectives. And so with Winnie's permission, we have lined this up, and you're okay with us recording you today, Winnie?
I certainly am,
I'd also like to introduce a friend, Carrie Biney, and she will also be asking questions of Winnie, and we're just going to let her share a lot with us today. So, are we ready to start? Okay. Winnie, I have known you since I was a little girl, but you've been ahead of me a little bit, so things that I would like to know would be about your early days and perhaps even a little bit about your early family. Your grandparents were out here many years ago. Tell us a little bit about your grandparents, their names, where they lived in the area, and what they did for a living.
Okay. It's a case of where my mother, and first I should say is my grandfather came from England, and his brother Jim Roke was here, and he is the one that started the foundry in Oregon City. And the reason they used put the foundry in Oregon City was because of the mill needing the equipment.
That was the paper mill?
That was the paper mill. That was Hawley's paper mill, where he came to. And of course, they came, my grandfather came with his wife and their little boy. And that was the first one of the family. And after they were here in Oregon City, grandfather worked in the paper mill over at West Lynn. Not the Hawleys, but at West Lynn. And he fell in the beaters.
Oh boy.
And he had a hole in his head, right square in the middle of his head. And it was a case of where they thought, well, they'd have to put a steel plate or something in it, but he never put the steel plate in, but he recovered. And the grandmother wanted him to take and go and do other type of work. So he was able to take and do gardening work for the men that had the West Lynn Inn and that, where they really planted things and kept them going.
What years would that have been, Winnie? What do you think? Guess.
Oh, well, it was in the early 1900s.
Oh, right.
Right in there, yes.
Okay, great.
And after the family, or after he was settled in the mill there, why then, and he fell into the beaters. Why he was in the hospital. I'm sure there was a case of where my grandmother came down 11th Street in Oregon City and was to cross the train track there, and she was hit by the train and killed.
Oh my.
And so it was a case of where he had 4 youngsters and he married the nurse that he had in the hospital and took care of it. And she was the one that asked him to take and go out and do greenery out around Estacada. Because in other words, there was the good big trees out there, and there was plenty of ferns and Oregon grape and that kind of stuff, and they would use it for the florists in Portland. And so that's why he proceeded to do that, and he did it until we had the fire out at Estacada, and it completely burned the area off. So then they had to move from there. They moved from Oregon City. They moved up to Castle Rock, and he did it around Mount St. Helens. But that's what my grandfather always was great on being with the florists and whatnot like that.
So where did your father and mother come in?
Well, the Gardner family, why, they came from Michigan. My grandfather was what you can call well, he was a salesman or in the woods with the timber people. And of course, the first thing that people want is when they get into the to make some money probably is a watch. And so that was why he would take, my grandmother made a vest that had all the little pockets in it to keep the little watches in, because they didn't have the watches assembled like we do now. They came with, you could buy your case, and whether it was a gold one or a silver one, and then you could pick your dial and you could have your hands and whatnot like that, so that it made all the difference in the world of how expensive a watch you had in the kind of a case. Well, that's what he did that, and he would take and go out and into the woods, and if they had a broken part, why, he would fix the watch and that. Well, then after he liked to take and go from one place to another place, and finally then he decided he was going to come to Oregon. So he came on out to Oregon. He left his family back in Michigan, and he moved there, came on out here. And finally, when he came out, he said he was going to settle out here. Grandmother says, when we settle out here, this is the last place I am moving to.
She gave him the word.
That's right. That's right. So anyhow, it's a case of where he started the little jewelry store or repair watches down around in by 5th Street, down in towards where the mill is, and had a little place in Oregon City. Okay. And then from there on, from that, they moved up to 719 Main Street. Right on there, that was the main place we were until we retired. Grandfather and grandmother had the store. She had the glass work, and she did the selling of the jewelry, and he did the watch work and whatnot. And grandfather was an optometrist. And
now tell me what kind of education he would have had at that time.
They didn't have anything. You learned it by how you do it.
Okay, all right. Because I think you shared a story with me about how he determined...
That's exactly right, okay. And that's why when he was with the glasses for reading, you didn't have anything to anybody if you couldn't see far away. That wasn't anything, but it was the reading is what you were interested in. And he used a yardstick so that he would know how many diopters and whatnot that that you had to have on your glasses and that to read. But that was the way he did it. And then when my dad, he came into the jewelry store, it was a case of where he went to Pacific College, and that was De Kaiser's watch or clock, optical. And he really had to take his state exam and whatnot for that. So
a little more scientific.
That's right. It kept growing up and growing up and growing up, and yeah. And then after my dad was through, then my brother became an optometrist, and he went to North Pacific College of Optometry over at Forest Grove over there.
And his name was
Wilmer Gardner. Yes.
Correct.
But anyhow, that was the way that the optical end of it came into being.
Now, you got an education, but it wasn't necessarily in that phase of the business, was it?
No.
I went to go to school.
I went to Lewis and Clark College. I was of the first graduating class of Lewis and Clark.
Wow.
Because it had always been Albany College before that.
Gotcha. All right. How many women were in class with you? Do you have a guess?
There wasn't more than about 40 people in the whole class. Okay. Men and everybody, you see. Okay. Because, in other words, we'd gone down on Main Street in Portland, and then when they finally bought the old Meyer estate up and on the hill, right. That's when they...
So that's when the college moved?
That's right, was when the college...
Did it get renamed when it was moved up there?
That's right. They changed it from Albany College up to Lewis and Clark when they put it up on the hill. Yeah.
Right. So what were you studying?
I was a science. I took science.
Were there other women doing science work at the time?
Well, I was, but other words, I didn't. And then I didn't take and stay with it. I was going to teach, but I didn't teach, and that was when I went to work for Ray Parker, the manufacturing jeweler in Portland. Okay. And I did all the jewelry work. In other words, I sized rings, I I didn't set stones. I was never a stone setter, but I certainly could make shanks and whatnot that was needed to be taken and be repaired on that. And so then when I got through with that and my mother had the stroke, well, then it was time to come out to the college.
That's what I was going to ask you. So about what years do you think it was that you came out to Oregon City?
About in 35.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So tell us about your brother Wilmer a little bit. Wilmer was in the family business, and you shared with me before about how Wilmer was involved in World War II, but prior to that, tell us the story a little bit about how he got involved in the military.
Well, it was a case of where it was the draft. And he was the first one out of Clackamas County to be drafted. Because my dad and the man that was in charge of the draft didn't get along very well. And why or not, I haven't any idea. But there's things like that go on, and so that was why my brother was drafted, went to Fort Ord, and then when the declared the 28-year-old law came in, why he was let out because he was of the age to get out, and he was home for a few months until war was declared, and then he was taken back. And then he was back in there, and then he was one of the first ones to go out over the bar in San Francisco for South Pacific. Yeah,
Right.
And he was in the medical end of it at that time.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
Wilmer was in charge of medical. Well, when they'd have somebody. See, there was an accident and they had to have a box and they put the stuff with the alcohol in it and they sent it out. Wilmer was the one that wrapped it up and sent it. It came back to the States.
I see. Okay.
That's the type of thing he did.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your early childhood. You were living out in Gladstone area, or tell me where you lived.
I am living in the house that I was born in 96 years ago.
Very good. And could you give us that address?
The present address is 18502 Southeast Abernathy Lane. It used to be Railroad Avenue, and then it was something else before that, so there's been changes.
That's why I was asking.
There's been many changes on the names of the road. Yeah, all right.
So where did you go to school?
Jennings Lodge.
Okay.
The one up on River Road, the old four-room school. And, and that's...
How many students do you think were there at the time?
Well, they were two classes in each room, of course.
Okay.
And maybe they could have had 15, or they maybe have had only 7. It just depended on the way how it worked, and sometimes why how many students you had.
How much territory did Jennings Lodge draw from as far as students?
All right, from Glen Echo
Okay.
to Oatfield to the river and to Neff.
All right.
The
So
same way
the
that was the school district. Yes.
Okay. Great.
How far were people educated at that level? To what grade level were you?
Oh yeah, you 8th grade. You went into high school. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So from 8th grade and then.
They one of the things that they said with our Jennings Lodge was that the number of people that had gone through high school and whatnot, there was more youngsters that went on and went to college from our area.
Really?
Than there was from a lot of the other areas.
Do you remember any of your teachers?
Florence Moore Adkins was one of them, and then she came back here after she taught. In fact, she came and Wilmer had her first, then I had her, and then she was there for, I don't know, 10 years or whatnot. She retired, and then lo and behold, she comes back and teaches some of these grandkids that she was teaching when she was there. Yeah,
That's great. So tell us a little bit about your activities as a child living in the area. what kind of games did you play in that?
Run, sheep, run. Did anybody ever play Run, Sheep, Run?
I've heard of it.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things that we would get together, and there was one light on Addy, at the corner of Addy and Hull, and the neighbors paid to keep the light on at night.
Street light.
Street light, yeah.
Okay.
And so we would congregate up underneath there, and then we would play, in other words, with doing that. And
Did you ever play jacks or?
no, I never did.
Okay.
I couldn't be bothered.
So what were you doing that you couldn't be bothered?
Oh, but I love to take and build. I used to love to take and build. One of the things I got for Christmas was a load of old lumber, and my dad went to the lumber yard and had them pick up the stuff that they had, scraps that they had left, and then that was when I built my chicken house. And I had such a good time building
So did you raise chickens?
Oh, yes, I did. I had bantams, and I had regular chickens.
All right.
Yeah.
So then that supplied the family with eggs, I would assume.
Oh,
and-
yeah,
and meat.
Well, yes.
To butcher those. Yeah,
but you know, you didn't like to take and have to chop their heads off.
But you did that. You
Oh,
had to.
yeah, you had
Did
to
you
do-
raise other animals as well?
No,
Family?
we had dog. We had dog.
Not cows or
No,
sheep
no,
or
no,
anything
no,
like that.
no,
No pigs.
no,
All right.
no. We didn't have room enough.
Okay.
But that was one of the things that in the area why you had all the fences. Everybody had a fence along there, so because everybody let their cows run loose, and if you didn't have your front yard fenced off, you had at this time of the year you'd have cows that were walking around and not making it very nice for your lawn. I mean, that.
So if you looked from your home, looking west toward the Willamette, what would have been, other than the school was there, but was there other buildings to
Well,
much?
now, listen, in other words, I was a little bit further south, so I couldn't see the school.
Okay.
But then there was well, right across the street from us was a completely open area from there practically clear to River Road, which was nothing more than the neighbors' cows that ate in there and
Right,
that.
okay. Now, you wandered down to the river, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, we'd go off down like River Drive, or down Hull or whatever, not like that, and you played. We could take and go. There was the man that had the boats at Jennings when there was a fish were in.
There was a fish what?
Fish, when they were fishy.
Okay.
You know, in other
Yeah.
words, the run of the salmon.
Okay.
Alrighty, and Jerry Madden had the boat landing down there, and he rented boats out for people to go
Really?
fishing.
Now, was that at the end of Hull, or was that at River Drive?
Between River Drive and well, in that area,
Okay.
in there,
All right.
And if we could go down there anytime and what we wanted to, and just go get a rowboat and go out and go across over to Cedar Island and that, as long as we brought the stuff back and we took.
Did you have to pay to use
No, we didn't have
Do
to
you
pay.
know what people paid to rent
I
the
have
boats?
no more idea than you
That
do.
would be interesting to know what they paid.
What they had to pay for it.
Right.
No, no.
Lots of salmon? Was there lots of salmon in the river at the time? Do you
Quite,
know?
yes. It was heavy with salmon.
That's great.
Yeah.
So, did you help your mom do canning or gardening or anything like that? Or did your mom do any of that?
Well, we always canned fruit.
Okay. Did
So
you have
when-
your own fruit trees?
Yeah, we had our own fruit trees and that. We had of course, the made applesauce and that
Yeah.
kind of stuff, and not that fruit.
Ravenstein apple.
Yeah. But no, in other words, we never canned vegetables.
Okay.
Mother was scared to death of a pressure cooker.
Well, they were kind of a wild contraption. Okay, so a family dinner. If you were having a family dinner, you and Wilmer and Mom and Dad, what would be a typical meal? A typical breakfast and also a typical dinner, maybe?
Oh, ordinary regular breakfast was usually you had your hot oatmeal.
Okay.
Hot oatmeal, and you'd have your toast, and maybe if you had, she maybe have made biscuits once in a while, but not too often.
Sourdough, or did
No,
she?
regular biscuit,
Regular
biscuit, yeah. But no, that other words, breakfast was you got it over with because everybody was going off, go to school or going to work, and you didn't take and sit around and think about it too long. Yeah.
Okay, how about for dinner?
Well, we had meat and potatoes and gravy.
Okay, I can understand that. That's...
Because my dad was from the Midwest and he didn't like vegetables. And as my mother always said, now you have children, you're going to have to learn to eat vegetables.
So shape up, right?
So I got my dad.
So was there a grocery store around at all?
Yes, we had a grocery store that was on the corner of Hull and what you would call Abernathy right there.
Okay.
And it was the Blue Front grocery store. And everybody would send their list of things in, and or else the woman would take and go from one house to another and get their order, and then they would fill it, and then they had the man that delivered them for the groceries.
So they delivered them to you?
Yeah, they delivered them to you and all around the neighborhood.
Milk too, and things like that?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
yeah, because you would just put your order in, and then they'd fill it, and then they'd deliver it for you.
All right, now, do you know if they paid each time they got delivery?
I
or
think
they
it was.
had an account
I
at the
think they
store?
got an account at the store.
Right, okay. Now, there was a little grocery many years later called Inez's, and it was on the corner.
Well, Inez's was the Blue Front.
Oh, okay.
Because Inez Mutton married into the family, and it was her family ahead of that had the store.
Okay, because there was the little market on the corner of River
Road, and they were the same
Jennings.
thing. They were the same people.
Same people, okay. Was that building that I'm speaking of now on the corner of River Road and Jennings, was that at one time a firehouse? Do you recall?
No.
I'd heard that.
No. In fact, the grocery store was across the street from where the building is now.
On the corner going toward the river?
Yes, on the southwest corner over there. All right, the building is gone now.
Right.
But no, other words, when Buchanan's had the grocery store down there on Abernathy and whatnot, then they built their new grocery store up there with apartments upstairs.
Right.
And then they could rent apartments, and they had a son that was not well, and so they had him in one apartment and that.
I
So that was
interesting. All right. Now there was another building that I was curious about, and that would be behind what now we would call Roke's, and to me it was the post office.
Oh, you mean, oh yes, we had the post office.
All right.
The Jennings Lodge post office.
Right.
And it was just a little grocery store with the post office connected to it.
Okay.
All righty. But Mamie Horn was the postmistress.
That's great. Glad you can remember her name.
Yeah, and she was a big, buxed woman. Maybe I shouldn't say this
that's
to
all
you.
right. You're fine.
You're all, yeah. And she just loved to take and stand there and visit with people. And she would get up, and the window was right here like this, and the take out here like that, and she'd say, "And well."
Oh, gosh. That's great. Oh, good fun. Okay, so what do you remember about, let's talk about transportation at the time. Your family had an automobile?
Yes, we had an open overland.
Overland?
It was a second hand. It wasn't a new car, and I proceeded to go to the grocery store or down there and told them we had a new hand car.
A hand car. Meaning?
Meaning it was a second hand car.
Oh, gotcha. That's great. So did you travel, if you drove the car, what roads did you drive on? Did you go on River Road, or was there a highway? Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, the only thing you had was a river road, and then each road that connected east and west.
Right.
Like Meldrum and Hull and Jenny, like that. They were the only ones that care. But you had your old river road, and it was a 2-lane road, but it was very crowned. that was the way everything was built at that time, was so that the water would run off of it.
Okay.
And then, but
How about Oakfield? Did they have Oakfield Road at that
it
time?
was still pretty much of a rutty road. It wasn't, it was through, but you wouldn't take and go out there and travel on it.
I see. Okay.
No.
So how about McLaughlin Boulevard? What do you remember about that?
Well, I can remember when they were building it.
Oh, okay. Well, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it was the ground was purchased by the state to put in the road, and it was wide enough for the 4 lanes at the time, but they only put in the 2 lanes the one time until they had money enough to come along and finish it out. So we had the 2-lane road for, I would say, maybe 2 or 3 years, and then they finally had enough money to take and do it and make the 4-lane highway.
And it started where, and it kept going to, do you recall? Did it start in Portland, or did it start further north?
Well, no, there were words. It was, before you got to Milwaukee, it started into Milwaukee and went through that, by the railroad tracks and all down
Right,
in
where the
through there.
veterans housing and
down
that
into
ended up
that
being,
area,
right.
that's where it was,
Okay.
yeah. But they usually came in off of 17th or something
All
or
right.
other down in
All right.
there. Because when you left, went out of Portland, you went across the Hawthorne Bridge and went in over onto 17th or in that, and then
Right.
you headed south and went through Selwood, and you
Exactly.
went right through Selwood
Okay.
and out through into Milwaukee.
Okay.
And then up the old river road, up the Island Hill on there.
Right.
And now that's the thing that I can remember. One of the things was that we had the fire at the state capitol, and we burnt the state capitol down. And what did they do? But they send a fire engine from Portland up to Salem, and
Oh
you
my
know,
gosh.
and you know how much good it did. But I stood on the front porch of the school and saw the fire engine going to Salem to fight the fire.
That's so interesting. Oh, that's great. Well, I know that you would remember the businesses that might have been along 99E, as it was named. It was McLaughlin Boulevard, but also 99E. Do you remember any businesses that were there,
Well,
or that they built?
the hot dog stand.
Roke's hot dog? Was it Roke's?
It was Ed Burdine.
Burdine.
Ed Burdine was the one that built or had the building put in
Right.
there for him
Okay.
that he used and that. And we could come down, we'd go to church and go to young people and whatnot like that, and we could come down and get Coke and that was 30 cents.
30 cents? That was a lot.
That was 30 cents, yeah. That was a lot of money, but that we would save up until we got enough so that we could go and
That's great.
have a hot dog and whatnot like that. But no, there was Burdine's, and then there was the Chicken in the Rough.
Yes. And that was down at the
That's
intersection
down closer to the river.
Right, well,
down
it was
there.
at, wasn't it River Road and
Yeah,
where
right there,
99
right
came
there,
in,
right
at
there
that
together,
intersection?
yeah,
Right.
uh-huh. Alrighty, and, but now there was Burdine's and, or that and that.
How
Well,
about
then-
the castle? Was the castle around then?
Yes, you see, the castle was built right at the time before the Depression hit. And it was going to be one of those buildings where they had each individual room where they would set up the furniture in it so that they could sell sofas, or they could have a living room or a dining room or whatnot like that. And that was the way that they were going to do it with that. And well, of course, it went bottom up when the Depression came. It just,
Right.
and then the building sat there for so long until they finally took it down and that.
Well, but it was a restaurant. It was a very
Oh,
active
yes,
restaurant
it's
for
been the
many
castle.
years.
They called it the castle, and that.
It
And they
wasn't
had.
named the castle though originally. Do you recall? when it was the furniture display?
No, they didn't. It was just the furniture. It was just,
Just the furniture.
just there. But no, other words, no, as you say, where they had the castle, and they did have, and of course that was during the Prohibition.
Yes, I know stories about that. Lots of gambling.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, okay.
So other words, but no other words. I'm sorry, I never went there.
Oh, you missed out. Tell us about the trolley, because now the trolley was a good mode of transportation through there, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
After all, I can say it was there when I was born, and then it was, so, no, but it was, and it was, well, it went every half hour between Portland and Oregon City.
Okay.
It was and they were usually, in the evenings and the mornings they were loaded. They were just,
Really?
you'd almost think like as the pictures you see, there are people hanging out on things in Mexico and
Right.
whatnot like that. That people were that, but.
Were they allowed to bring critters on the?
No.
Okay.
And we had a motorman and a conductor at the time.
Okay.
But no, and they were the big cars. They were the railroad cars, not the low ones.
Oh, okay.
They were high. You had about 4 steps to get up
get in there.
to get up onto them.
So would you take that then to go into Portland?
Oh, yeah,
when you were
we
going
went-
to school at Lewis and Clark.
Dorothy McCullough Lee decided that her husband was in the oil business, and so therefore we want to get rid of the streetcars out of Portland, and that's how we got rid of the streetcars in Portland.
Okay. Well, that's an interesting little side venture.
Do you follow why I'm
Yes,
saying?
yes, I do, completely.
Yeah.
So did you ever stop in Oak Grove when you would be on the trolley, or come down that area at all?
Well, see, my aunt lived at Island Station,
Oh, okay.
Milwaukee, and whatnot, and we would get on there. As a youngster, why, Mother would even put us on the car and pay for us, and the conductor would see that we got off at the right spot.
Very good. So, and how old would you have been when you were doing that?
I would probably been 7 years old, maybe.
really?
Other words.
That young.
But that time, day and age, you didn't worry about kids being snatched and taken away and something whatnot.
That's true.
You knew the conductors and what. Mr. Rex was one of the old conductors that we knew so well. Yeah.
Great. Did you ever ride on the Red Electric?
No, I never did.
Okay.
No, Dad had the right to, or he checked the watches for the streetcars. He had, it was the Willamette Valley Southern that went from there out to Molalla and whatnot and there. And as I always said, I wish to goodness that he had taken us for a ride on that, but we never did. We never did.
Okay.
No.
I was just curious. You mentioned about your family going to church. What church did your...
We were at the Congregational Church there, Jennings Lodge.
In Jennings Lodge.
Just Jennings Lodge, My mother was a Sunday school superintendent for I don't know how many years,
Were you familiar with the campground then there?
Yes,
On
the
Red Road?
evangelical campgrounds was
Right.
up there, and they'd have their camp in the summertime,
Right.
and then, but the rest of the time it was closed up pretty much.
It
and
was
they-
closed, huh?
Yeah, and they had other words, there was other families who had individual cabins, and then they could come out and use those any time that they wanted them, and that.
All
It was
right.
just like vacations times and whatnot. Then you go down on the river and play on the river and whatnot.
Isn't that wonderful? Carrie, you must have some questions. I hear I'm kind of taking over and not letting you get a word in there.
I was actually wondering about this area during the Depression. How did it affect businesses? How did it affect your family? Things like that.
Well, just about like it's doing now.
Definitely a downturn. Did you see a lot of families that were struggling?
Well, yeah, but I could still think with my dad why it was a case of where he would repair a watch or something or other for a sack of potatoes. Or a couple of chickens or something like that. That's one of the things that Mother says, don't you ever bring me any butter. The butter wasn't good.
Oh, really? He was supposed to raise his height a little bit there.
Yeah, it was evidently, there was a little bit sour milk that was made into it, and it wasn't good, but I could remember that discussion at the very definitely.
So you had your family, did you notice other families were doing bartering for services and goods? And
well,
such?
they didn't do too much, but you kind of looked after the neighbors that if they needed something, you kind of helped out and whatnot, yeah.
Well, now you must have known the Finley family, and didn't they get hit pretty hard about...
The Finley family were one of the kind of families that stayed to themselves.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes, they didn't associate with the neighborhood too much, but there was this Augusta Madison, was the cook for them. And there was lots of times when she said they went pretty well thin on the food.
Okay, huh. Could you tell who the Finley family was, or what his?
Well, in
Finley?
other words, he was with the birds. He was very interested in birds.
Right.
And
wasn't he the first game warden or something like that for the
I think
state?
he was. I think he was the first game warden for the state and whatnot.
And started the first game commission
and fish and deal that.
Right.
But
and Audubon Society.
yeah. But if we had a bird, we'd pick up a bird or something that had a broken wing or something. We would take it over to him and that. Sometimes he was very gracious about taking it, and other times he wasn't.
Interesting. And so, but their estate, the Finley estate, still.
The man that has just bought it, had me out for lunch here not too long ago.
Stephen? Yes. Right. Steve Berliner?
Yes.
Right. Beautiful old home, and
beautiful
he's doing
old
nice
home.
things with that. So I was just curious if you remembered ever going to that home.
Well, I did when the Zetbars were there.
Zetbars, okay.
They were there. I was there several times for church meetings. We'd have a business meeting.
Because the Zetbauers took it over from the Finleys.
Finleys, that's right. And then after he passed away, then Ruth sold it.
Do you remember other big estates that were kind of like the Finley thing at all? How about, oh man, I'm losing it here. Where Homewoods is now.
That was the doctor's brother.
Yeah,
Was a dentist. Yeah, he was a dentist, but don't ask me his name. Don't ask me his name.
But that was quite an interesting.
That was a nice. That was a nice home that was down there.
We'll
Yeah.
have to do our research and see if I can come up with a name on that. So,
Yeah.
think of any others along the path there that you as a child might have played with the kids, or.
Well, it was all of us that went to school, and it was coming the hill or the road from Jennings coming down clear down to the river. Whenever it snowed, that was where we went to sledding.
Aha! All right.
Yeah.
Do you still have the sled?
Yes, I do.
Good
I
girl.
still do have it. I still do have the
Do
sled.
you really? That's great.
The last time it snowed, I took it out and get one of the little neighbor boys, and then I thought, I don't think I want to let anybody
take care of
let him
that.
take
I know
care.
the name of the dentist. It was Dr. Karatley.
That's right.
Karatley
That's
estate.
right.
Right.
Because he had the Ruth, the daughter, and
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Did you know them at all?
Well, the girl was in Wilmer's youth group,
Okay.
but I didn't have much to do with it.
All right. So if you, Carrie, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I know you must have more questions than.
Not a lot, but did you marry? Did you have children?
I was married and divorced.
And kept your maiden name.
That's right.
And you kept your maiden name.
That's right.
And your brother is how much older than you?
He was 4 years.
4 years older than you.
Yeah, and he never married.
And he never married.
Yeah.
And you lived together for.
Oh yeah, well that's right. Because it was a case of where the property has the two houses on it. my dad bought the property, and then when he got some more property out of Clark's or out over that direction, why he had to turn it over to my grandmother, and that was when my grandfather decided it was time to build the houses, and so he built the other house, which is one I live in, the one in 18502. But no, it was just a case of where families looked after both families. Yeah, mother and dad were there, and the grandparents were in the other one, and so as a youngster, why I was just back and forth between two houses, and that's almost the way I am right to this day. It's a case of where you just go between one houses and that. Yeah.
And you always, did you work anywhere else besides?
No, I worked, as I said, I worked for the manufacturing jeweler in Portland for a while.
Yes.
And then I came out and worked at the store.
At the store.
Yeah.
What was the name of that store?
Gardner's Jewelry.
Gardner. Well, okay.
Do you remember the elevator in Oregon City? Did you ever go up on that?
You mean the old one?
Yeah.
Oh,
that old one.
oh yes, I went up on that one. And the one thing that was the most interesting is when it was raining and it was blowing and whatnot, there was that big long walk that went from the elevator back up to the hill, and you could be wet from your hips clear up.
It wasn't covered, was it?
Well, it was just wired.
Exactly.
So there wasn't any chance of anybody falling off, but no, it was that way. And it was the same way when I went to high school. It was a case of where we rode the streetcar. The school gave us tickets for transportation because we were in a non-high school district.
Now, you went to West Lynn?
I went to West Lynn.
Okay.
And you could go any place you wanted to go to school. You could go into Portland, you could go Milwaukee, Oregon City, West Lynn. It was all the way around.
Why
and
did you choose West Lynn?
We liked Mr. Gary, who was the principal, and the family knew him and whatnot, and so this is why Wilmer chose it. And then when Wilmer chose it, why, of course, I went on and went to West Lynn. And but no.
But they gave you a ticket and you wrote, how did you know?
Well, in other words, they'd give us the little drugstore that was clear down on 5th Street. Why, they would issue the tickets, and they were a regular book of tickets.
Right.
And so you had one of those, and you carried those with you, and you paid that on the streetcar.
Oh, and the streetcar went over to Westland.
No.
No, I'm sorry. Okay.
You walked across the bridge.
Okay.
You went across the bridge. When you went from here, you went to Oregon City. If you went to West Oregon City, you got off at 12th Street and you walked up to the high school. If you went to West Lynn, you got off at 7th Street and you walked across the bridge and up to the high school.
All right. All right.
They're both.
It
was a case of where you got your exercises right. They don't take you with the school buses.
Do you know when they made the Jennings Lodge area specifically go to Oregon City schools?
No, I really don't.
You had the choice, but
yeah,
I just wondered at what point they...
It was in that time of when I was doing something else and I wasn't. If you follow where I'm going, in other words, to come forth and say, well, it was a certain year, this and that, I can't answer you that. But now it's a case of where the kids, why, I understand they're even going to let them go to Gladstone.
Are they?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
No.
Oh, wow.
Well, if there was one thing that about you that others don't know, what would that be? I mean, you're pretty open and you share a lot, but is there something that, some exciting adventure that you did that others don't really know about you?
Oh, I don't know. Oh, I'll have to tell you.
Okay.
My grandfather, of course, I was his little pride and joy, and he had an old Model T Ford, just a little coupe, and he would let little me drive his car.
Oh, really?
Yes.
How'd you reach the pedals?
That was the trouble. That was the real trouble, like that. And of course, he would let me he would take me to school, and I could drive it to school. And then, of course, he would drive it on home. Well, the one afternoon, why, it was a case of where we were going to go to do something, and I took the car out, and he was with me, and we got to Meldrum Station, and I practically ran over the streetcar, and the street. I'm sure that little me's eyes were bigger than that and everything else, because by the time my mother got home from work, why, everybody along on the streetcar knew that it had taken place, because each conductor had told each one on me for doing that.
How old would you have been, do you think?
Probably 8, 9 years old. As I say,
What an adventure.
I was grandfather's little pride and joy.
That's fun. Gary, do you have some more questions?
I don't.
I think I've.
You've run out of.
Have you got anything else you want to share with us, Winnie? We're game, and we don't have a time frame here that we have to follow.
Well, I don't know that there's really anything particular else about it. What?
I was going to ask you more about the castle. Kind of backtracking here, but do you remember Monty Ballew's Castle Jazz Band?
No.
Okay. Because you were talking about the gambling and the things that went on in there, but you just didn't get over that side of the track.
After all that, let's say it was hearsay.
Oh, okay. All right.
Does that answers
my question.
Yeah. We know things that go on around the neighborhoods.
How about prohibition? Did you know people who made liquor and that kind of thing?
My grandfather, Gardner, made his own beer, and it was a case of where he would pull his curtains down, and then he would go ahead and start to mix his stuff up. And you could smell him for 3 blocks away. Blocks away.
That's a secret.
But no, that's one of the things I've always laughed about, was the fact that how concealed he was with this, what he was doing, like that. But you could smell him for blocks.
Oh, that's cute. Do you remember the Brochi house up here? Dora Brochi and any of those people here in the Oak Grove?
No, they were more in the Oak Grove area.
Okay, I just was curious if you'd run across them, because that was the first winery in Oregon, and I was just curious if you knew.
Well, there was the guy that was over at over at Park Place. Who was he? What was his name? Or he made wine too.
Okay, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. That would have been at Park Place
At Park
in Oregon
Place,
City.
Well, Park Place, Clackamas,
Right,
there off the end of the bridge in there in Gladstone.
Did you know any of the Indian culture in the area at all in Jennings Lodge? Was there? Wasn't there? Or was there? I'm asking you. An Indian encampment or some sort of something down maybe at the end of River Drive?
If there was, it was before my time.
I just didn't know if you knew
That's
anything
right,
about it.
Because now I've got a picture of an old house that's just practically broken up, and they said that was the Jennings house. But now whether that was, couldn't have been a lodge, because after all, there was just the two Jennings guys and all that. I wouldn't have wanted to have stayed at their house anyway.
No, probably not.
But yeah.
I just, somehow I had heard that there was some sort of an encampment or something.
Well, it was Finley Springs that was down there.
Okay.
And that was where where you could get water and good drinking water.
Oh,
Along on there. So that was one of the places where we went down and went swimming from in that area, because it had a good
dirtied
beach.
up that drinking water, huh?
Yeah.
So did everybody have a well?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Oh, goodness sakes, yes. You had well, what did I say, a septic tank? It was just a regular,
hole in the ground?
That's right. And you had a privy out in the back for that and that whatnot. I have to say, with our own house, why, it was a case of where, of course, I don't remember the privy out in the back, but I do remember them having first they moved it in and put it on the back porch, And then from there, they moved it into another room in there, and finally it got moved into where it belonged.
Okay. Interesting.
But after all, when you had your well, and then you had your big tank up on the top to give you pressure,
Right.
which was the two houses, boy, that was the way. And then if it froze, boy, that was one thing. You filled your bathtub full of water, so you had some water to use
point.
on that. But
How about electricity?
it was one light. That's the only thing I can ever remember is just one light that
One
hung
dim
down.
bulb out there.
One bulb that hung down on a wire
Okay.
in the living room. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Huh. Interesting. Did you ever go downtown Portland to any movies or
No,
movie theaters or anything?
no, not until I was in high school.
Okay, well, in high school you had the opportunity.
Oh
to
yeah,
do
in
that?
other words, you could spend you could get a whole $1 and you could go into on the streetcar, and you could go to a double feature, and then you could come home, and it was $1.
Wow. Do you remember the names of any of the theaters down there?
Well, there was the Pantages, so there was
Was there an Oriental and an Orpheum?
Oh, the Oriental, and that was all on the other side.
Yeah, at the Weatherly Building,
Yeah,
right.
over there. But we didn't go to that one too much because of the way the streetcars took you down and took you across on the west side. You didn't
Okay.
go over on the east side too much,
Okay.
yeah. But
Okay. All right. And how about now? You may have never even gotten to that part of the city, but the Burnside area and some of that, was that a major end of the city of Portland at the time?
well,
do
it
you
was
recall?
at the end of the bridge, or one of the bridges were, and
Burnside
that
Bridge, yeah.
and that. But I never.
You've never gotten that part of town to just see what-
Once in a while, when us kids were. Well, we're in high school and whatnot. Well, we'd get into a Model T Ford or one a little old car and go for Chinese food and go
down in that area.
down into that one
Sure.
area. Yeah.
What a treat that would be.
Oh, that was quite
You
a
didn't
tough.
eat out very often, I'm
No,
sure.
we did not. No, it was quite a treat when you did it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Gary, do you have any more questions?
You've run out. Well, you got any more to pick me?
Well, at this point, I can't think of anything unless I'm missing something. What do you think? Did we do okay? We covered a lot of territory. Jackie, how did...
Let's ask her if we can reserve the right to do another interview after we listen to this.
Yeah, if we think of more things, would you be willing to come back and chat with us again?
Oh yeah, I'll make myself.
I'll buy you lunch again.
Oh,
How
you
would
will?
that be? Okay.
Okay, all right.
Well, we really appreciate your time, and your memory is so good.
Okay. Is the sun shining out there now?
I think it may be.
If it is, well, I'm going to go home, change my clothes, and work in my raspberries.
Oh, wonderful. Yummy.
They need to be thinned. I worked on my blackberries yesterday a while.
So do you make jam and things like that? Or,
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Or freeze them? Or,
Yeah.
Yummy. Good eating, huh? Lots of fruit trees. Do you still have fruit trees?
Yeah, we got Gravenstein and got a
Yeah.
Gravenstein and that.
That's great. Good for you. Well, thank you. I'm gonna give you a
Okay.
big hug for all your hard
Okay. Oh God, you're hung up.
I'm hung up.
All
Thank
right,
you.
okay,
You're a
all right,
sweetheart.
All right. Okay. All
That's
right.
great. I have a piece of paper here that I need to have you sign for me. And what it's doing is giving us permission to use your information that we can share. So you're okay with that?
I'm okay. After
Okay.
all, I think it's all right. I don't think.
Yeah, you didn't say anything that anybody'd be offended by, so.
Well, there was the large buxom woman.